Go. Guys, I'll wait for some of you to get on. Hello, peace, love it, it's Friday, boom, 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 it's the weekend. Hopefully I'll get your comments coming through on here. Got some cool tips for you. I'm so organised today, I've got a list. Tried to get the laptop going, tried about 3 different phones, and I think we've got there with it. So, let me see if I can see the comments on here. Hopefully I can. It's going to take a second to load, and then we can get started. So start posting any of where you are. 1 second. Hold on. Ah, yes, I can see you, and I can see you seeing me. So put some comments in. Hello, Amanda in Malvern. How are you? And you sent me a kiss as well. Mwah. There's a kiss back. I won't touch my face, social distancing and all of that. So, has anyone got a picture of their car? Lynette, how are you? Nice to see you. A hello from my shop. Hello to you, shop, as well. Brilliant. Kent, you come from New York. Hey dude, how you doing? I've been speaking to some more people in New York this morning actually, so great to see you. Millie, hi Toby, Dolly here. Dolly, hello. What, Dolly that we went on the rally together? This Dolly. Let me put the laptop this way round, and then while this is just loading, we can wait for it to come on here, and at least I'm looking at the same screen as you guys. Oh, 31 of you come out on a Friday for a great Friday. Guys, I am looking forward to this. You know, I tried to look through some of the best tips and the hacks, and really looked at the things that have cost people a lot of money over the years. Something that happens to us a lot is that cars come in and they've got damage, or they've been in other garages and bits of them have been pulled apart, and some of the areas are really quick fixes, really easy things. So I'm hoping that I can help you with those. Fred, how are you doing? Good to see you there in Texas. I thought I would time this week a bit better so that hopefully you can we can all talk at the same time across the pond. So this Wi-Fi is going really slow, but it's so you were all here very promptly, I noticed, which is lovely to see. But if you're not, go up and down the page just above this, and you'll find a link to the newsletter. Get on the newsletter and it will send you emails to tell you when we're live, but it will also, some how-to guides don't make it to Facebook, so if you're not on that mailing list, you can get it on side this page. Hi from sunny Woburn Sands. Hello Woburn Sands, Connecticut, USA. Fred, hi Jonathan, how are you? Excellent. Right guys, I am going to get cracking in a second. I'll just say hello to a couple more of you, because so many of you we've met before face to face, so how lovely it is to see you. Laura Hennessy, hello. Sue Wilkins, hello. Oh, look at that, how nice. Oh I'm so grateful, because the worst thing about this social distancing and the lockdown is just not seeing people, isn't it? The two things that I would say I miss the most is not getting to see people smiling back at me when I'm at work, and also just the routine thing. It's trying to stick to a routine. Like today is Friday and I'm trying to work out what am I going to do for the weekend, and I'm trying to keep to plans so that I've got stuff that I do so I don't just go mad. So like this weekend I'm going to go and have a ride on my bike along by the river as my exercise. I've got some new parts for my motorbike, so I'm going to play around with that, put some of the new parts on. That'll be fun. And I'm going to drink some red wine, but only a small amount, because I don't want to end up an alcoholic. Kevin from the Figaro Club, hello. Philip Parsons, hello from Somerset. Right guys, I think we should get going. There is 40 something of you on here. Hello, thank you so much for coming on. Right, let's move this laptop and start. So the first bit that I want to show you is round over here, and it's to do with the doors. Now, this is one area that I've seen so much damage, and seeing cars on RAC trucks for days on end. is basically when you go to the car and you just press the lock and nothing happens and the door won't open. And the problem is, if you can't get the door open and you want to get into the mechanism to open the door, you've got no choice really but to actually start breaking bits. So I've seen people that have smashed the door panel off and caused all sorts of damage, and by that point the car's normally reached us here at the shop, and so there's, you know, we can fix it, but there's not a lot that's savable, and it's a massively common fault, and it's really simple. So basically what happens, and this is something you need to maintain to prevent it happening, something you can do today or this weekend. So when the door doesn't open, 99 times out of 100 it is because the actual piece you pull here, the little handle, if you see how that goes in and then returns back out, what happens is it starts to stick inside the door. Now you can get to this and lubricate it while it's in the door, but you can also get it open if it gets stuck. So let me just grab some tools, I'm coming back. So, here's one I did earlier, always wanted to say that, little Blue Peter trick. So here's the handle basically, and this is one that's seized up. So that's what it looks like when it's on the door. This little piece moves up and down on a rod, and what happens is you pull the handle in and all of this gubbins sticks, and so the handle doesn't pop back out. And the only way you can ever get it back out, you think, is taking the door apart and forcing it so it goes all the way back out. And the reason that happens is because this little spring here and these little gubbins all through here start to get blocked up. Now on the back of the door, you don't have to dismantle it like this one. On the back of the door, you can see, if you come around this side, you've got, I've pulled it off just then, you've got this little rubber bung here. You take that out the door, and then you probably can't really see in there, but with a long screwdriver like this, if you can see it, you can reach through into the door and you can push on the other side of the handle. And so if you come round and look at my hand, you're basically pushing one side with the screwdriver and working one side with your finger to push it backwards and forwards. Then, hold on, you would get some WD-40 with a straw, or even like a brake cleaner or a panel cleaner. You'd spray some of that through the hole and then you'd work it again. And one of the ways to tell that your door is on the way out, or on the way out, starting to gum up, is when you pull this handle. You see that one like clicks all the way back, and if I push it that way now, it's all the way, it won't go any further. If yours is even slightly starting to not travel all the way back out, you know that it's starting to gum up, and at some point soon it will fail. Now normally you can get some type of a pick in there. If this handle sticks in and the door's shut, obviously you can't get to the hole in the back. So my first tip is make sure, grease it anyway, so there's no chance that's going to happen. But if it does stick in and the door's closed, this handle will be stuck in, and what you can do is get a little pick or something that will fit behind it. Your finger wouldn't do it once, by the time it's already compressed in there, and just gently ease it back out, and that will allow you to get the door open once to clean it. Now if you pull it out and the door still won't open, push the little finger, the pin, back in the correct position, pull on the door a little bit, and this is not ideal, but this is when you're at the desperate point that you cannot get in the car, and just gently there with the back of your hand, you bash the door, and work this in and out. Now clearly there is a chance of denting your door at that stage, so you do have to be careful, but sometimes with just a little bit of a tap you can get it moving enough to get the door open, because removing this door card panel on the inside when the car's completely assembled without any damage is very close to impossible. So that's one of my best tips, because it saves loads of money, it costs nothing to do, and it makes the car a lot more reliable. Let me just have a look at the comments again. It really can get so expensive to end up fixing that one. Let's see how these come through. Okay, I think that's all of them on there. I think I've got you all. Excellent. Cool. Keep coming with any questions you've got as well, because some of you have emailed me during this week with different bits that you need to know about or want to know, and some of those I've picked up, but any more that you send through here, and I'll try and get at the time while we're going. So another tip I've got for you is the hood sticking. Now this is a really common one. I thought I'd just go through a guide on opening and shutting the roof. I know it sounds simple, but there's a few little things, and especially when it gets stuck, because it's really common for it to get stuck. So just for any of you that are new to Figaro, lucky enough to be new to Figaro ownership, to open the roof, you start by popping the rear boot, which you do from the button, which is down here, and you'll hear it click or clonk as you press the button. You catch it with your finger. The next thing you do is open the top boot. You'll just have to get your fingers under the side of it. If you can't get your fingers under the side of it, you can adjust it a bit, and you can also replace these struts, because they can end up like that, like the ones on here where they don't really go up and down much. I'll show you a set of those in a minute. The next thing you do is then undo the clamps inside the car. So these ones above your head, and when you open them, you see, you just got to make sure that you flick the little metal trim there so that it all pops forwards. The roof folds down into the back. You put the 3 straps lock over the top. So these, I won't put them all on now, but these lock together over the top of the roof, and then it shuts down onto the back like that, and the cover then pops onto the back parcel shelf and clips on there. Now, one of the really common things that happen is people call us, or yeah, we see them at shows or whatever, and the roof is stuck, and it gets stuck here at the left hand side at the front. They've got the rear boot open, the rear trunk, and this side of the roof won't open. Now that is because in here you've got this little safety clamp, and if you just stay focused on that, you can see this clamp, this one is actually not moving properly, but this one seems to have seized up a bit. It's seized up actually in the opposite position. This little clamp here, this little arm, should move backwards and forwards, and as it moves forwards it locks into place the roof. So as the roof comes down, that locks it into place. And as you can see from this car, it's a pretty unreliable mechanism. This one's actually locked in the wrong position, but if you look in the boot, this is how it works. So if you can see down here, you've got this small arm and then a cable, and the cable goes all the way up to the lock at the top of the car. Now as the boot shuts, it just allows this little cable to move backwards and forwards. But what happens is here, this little arm bends, and then it gets stuck basically, and it's on the wrong side of the little cantilever piece. And what happens is the top of the roof completely locks shut. So what you need to look out for, if your roof locks shut and it won't open, if you see here, you've got the bottom of the shock, of the gas shock absorber, pushing against the little arm there. Now if the arm bends and slips outside that, you'll be able to see that it's not doing the right thing, because you can move it backwards and forwards and just watch the mechanism going backwards and forwards. If that's not happening, then that's why the roof's locking at the top, or like this one, not locking, because obviously that's a safety feature, so it can't fly open on the way down the motorway. So that's a great tip, because again, we've seen people before where they've just tried to force the roof up because it won't go up. So that one's really, yeah, that one's a good tip for you as well. Any of those bits, guys, that you need for that as well, if any of your parts have failed, we do obviously the tonneau covers and the roofs, which I'm sure you know, but also we've just started making the straps, so you can buy the straps from us because they've got slightly unusual fittings on them. And then we've also made the boot, the strut themselves with slightly more pressure in, not so much that it hits you in the face, but just enough so it doesn't do that. Because when you see these cars and they've got big black marks across here, the black marks is where somebody's putting the roof down and this has slammed and hit the back frame. And the same thing with these, with the clamps. You know, these ones in here are actually pretty good, but when the clamps are smashed, it's normally because at some point the boot did that. I won't even leave that one up. The boot did that and it fell down and somebody got, you know, hurt fingers or broken bits or whatever happened. So hopefully that is useful. Let's see if this screen is still loading. I have a feeling it might be a bit slow. What were the questions? We've lost connection.
How do you open the roof of this one?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. Okay, so if you haven't seen this before, let me just grab the keys. So yeah, if you've got a flat battery, it's well pointed out. Whoever was that should come and be my assistant. Who is that?
Jonathan Lee.
Ah, Jonathan, how are you? So, boot gonna open. Let's do it on the car outside. The rain is just starting here in Didcot. I don't know what it's like wherever you are. You're early morning over in the US, aren't you? So it's probably not as bad. But yeah, if your battery goes flat and you can't get that boot open, inside here, now you probably barely see, but round here you've got two bits of cable. You might be able to see my finger. One on this side and then one in exactly the same place on this side. And basically that just releases the boot. And in fact, while we're on this car, just before we get too wet, I'll just quickly show you that mechanism on the roof that hopefully on this one is working. So you can see there it moves backwards and forwards. So that's the bit that sticks and stops working. Right, let's go back inside before the lens gets covered in water and I get wet and cold. I think in terms of roofs, that's about everything anyway. But do let us know, is there any more questions on roofs?
Rear demisters.
The dreaded rear demister. So at the moment, there's not really a fix for the rear demister. What's happening on most of the demisters is that they're just starting to break down over the years, and these little bars that run across should connect an electrical current, and what happens is as the current goes across, it doesn't hold, you don't get all the voltage all the way across. So if the light's coming on at the front and if you're getting some demisting, that might be as good as it can get. So we've been looking into, over a few years, getting the rear windows made, but the problem is the tooling for them is very expensive, and so it means the cost of the product wouldn't really be worth it. So at the moment there's not a great fix. You could buy, if yours isn't working at all, which most of them work a little bit, you can buy a second-hand one that might be better, because you can test them. If you wanted to test one, it's a little bit complicated, but I'll explain it. You need to use a voltmeter or a multimeter and connect it to one side, the connection here where they join. I I'll just say this quickly because it is a bit of a technical one. You're welcome to message us on this. So you'd connect to one side here, you'd connect to the other side in exactly the same place, and then you'd use the multimeter and just move it across each beam. So you'd have one pin of the meter there, and as you stepped it across, you would see the voltage, and ideally you want to see a minimal voltage drop. But when you're 3/4 of the way across, and it should be 12 volts, everything on the car is 12 volts, and it's 2 volts or no volts, you know there's no current going across. But if you've got power to here, there's nothing that's wrong with the car, and typically it's always the back window. Very, very rarely is it a fault somewhere in the car. It's normally just that the window itself is starting to fail. But if the car's really dry, then you shouldn't struggle too much with it unless it's in the middle of winter. Most of the misting up stuff is because you're getting some damp into the car, and I'll actually lead on to that one now, because what I wanted to talk to you about was the rear rubbers and the leaks that get inside the car, and I was just going to show you how we trim these rubbers on the back, because I made a video on it a couple of weeks ago, but I didn't actually show you how we trim them. So let me just quickly start with the fault and what the fault is. So if you have got damp inside the car in the footwells, typically for whatever reason, the left hand footwell, if it gets really wet, it's often the heater matrix. The way to tell that it's the heater matrix, because that in theory can destroy your engine, is dab it with white tissue, or dab any of the fluid with white tissue. If it's just muddy, then it's just water that's picked up off the road or from wherever, or general damp. If it's green or bright green or bright red, that means it's antifreeze, and you need to fix it quickly because it means your car's going to run out of water. But most cases it's a leak. A leak in the footwell normally comes from in the boot, not from anywhere else, and that's because the water runs through here, down under the back seat and into the front, and it always seems to take the same route. Now what happens is, somewhere I thought I had a watering can so I could do a demo. Aha! Clever cameraman spotted it. Right, so what happens is the water runs down here, and the idea is that it will run down and go through the holes into the floor. Now I haven't pre-checked this, so I don't know what's going to happen on this car because it hasn't been worked on yet. So you can see it goes all over the shop, but one of the things that is definitely not meant to happen is these bits run. It's hard to see if you go around the other side with the camera. It's very slight, but believe me, it makes the car really wet. You see how you've got some that's running down here, and it's running down and into the boot, and it will be running down that hole there. It seems really slight, but you'd be amazed how wet some of these cars get. Part of the reason is these rubbers are super detailed, and the way the water's meant to run is all in certain directions, and this one's actually got 2 channels, and they get flattened over the years. And you know, most of the faults with cars this age tend to be that rubber parts are starting to fail, and that's not necessarily a Figaro thing, it's just a modern classic car thing. The place here that is the worst is this piece, because the water's meant to run down where my finger is, and then it's meant to go underneath. There's a little gap like where the top of my nail is, under there, and then it's meant to come out through this little tunnel down here and run out and down this hole here at the bottom, just there. But that system, I mean, this has been flattened and slammed for 30 years, and it generally doesn't work. And we found a few years ago a fix that is really, really efficient if that's where your fault is, but you've got to be careful. So probably not the best job to do on camera, but basically you're cutting just here and here. So I'm going to do this one because it's something that we would do on any car. So I'm just going to cut 2 little slots here, and you can't just hack into it because you only want to go through this sort of top gully. I have to get another blade in a minute. And then you see you've got this, you see how I've now got a little channel, and now if I tip some water down, you'll just see that when it runs into that lower gully, it's got a better chance. I put a bit much on there, but you see it will just run back through, and it's got a much better chance of making it down there, and then that will in a second run out through the floor. Now that can save you a lot of time and a lot of money, because once your carpet goes mouldy for a certain amount of time, it loses all its colour, it stinks, you know, you've got all the rust issues that go with water on this car, and you'd be surprised, you don't have to be somewhere that's that damp for that to happen. So cutting the rubbers is a good one. Does that make sense, guys?
Can you buy new rubbers?
No, not all of them. So we do these rubbers that go here, that go along the chrome. We do, because they crack and they look horrible and chipped and like they've been eaten by mice. We do this rubber that goes along here because it shrinks. I think these ones we can get, and a few other bits. But no, those big ones that go around the roof, we can't. Again, it's the same challenge that we get with the back windows, that some of these parts are complicated, and for us to get the tooling manufactured is just not cost effective, which is a shame. But there's yeah, hopefully those hacks will help you out. In terms of that rubber, if you really want to try and make it a bit better, just give it a really good clean and go through, you know, all the bits along there. Let me just grab a cloth and I'll show you. The get an implement, ideally not if it's a screwdriver, not a sharp one, and just use, if you watched my video last week, you'll see I just used a general purpose cleaner. I would use that neat, and I would just literally rub right through all of those gullies. One, it will soften it up, but two, it's normally moss and rubbish that sits in them. But yeah, you can see with that one how much comes out of it, and so give it a clean up. You can use some rubber preserver, but I'm not sure how amazing all of those products are. Okay, so onwards. One thing that you asked me about this week was the washer bottles. I talked about them last week and mentioned the fact that they leak when we were cleaning the cars, and I was showing you about, you know, how to detail up the engine bay and get that to look a bit better. So I thought what I could do today is just show you how to repair one when it's gone. So I thought, I had a quick look, and the one on this car looks pretty ropey, so let's see if we can repair it. So typically this fault comes around either because you're topping your washer fluid up once every 2.5 days, or if you go around that side you can probably see, or because you've detailed the engine bay and you can see you're getting this leak. And this one has obviously leaked, like most of them, because you can see it. One, it's got no fluid in, but two, you can see it where it's dribbled across the top of there. So we need to take the washer bottle off. We're going to go over it and just tidy it up a bit. You need to take it off to do that. So it's really simple job. This is something you can do at home. So you just want a big screwdriver like that one, a big chunky one. You've got 2 Phillips screws. With those screws, they'll always be a little bit sticky, so just make sure you've got a nice big screwdriver and a bit of grunt to get them off with, but they should come off okay. Now ideally, to do this you want the bottle empty, because otherwise it's going to leak as you take it off, but if it does, it's not the end of the world. So you've got 2 parts, 2 things that are joined on. So you've got firstly the pipe that feeds through from the actual jets themselves, so you need to pull that off. Now if this bottle was full, some fluid would come out now. The second thing is the power plug, which is here, that obviously powers the washer when you press it, so you just pop that off. Then if you come over to the bench, hopefully you can see it on here. I laid a load of parts out to show you what I was doing today. Now normally when these fail, it's because either the pump's just failed or the rubber bung around the bottom has started to go. So you give that a pull to start it moving. Now you could always, if it won't move and it's been on there 30 years, you can always just put a screwdriver behind it or something and just give it a little pull to get it started. And then you've got to try and work this out of the hole, so it'll just give it a bit of grunt and a twist and it should come out. So yeah, that's the old pump. Important thing is make sure you take this bung out because that's probably perished as well. This is a new pump. It should be a much tighter fit, so we'd start off by putting the rubber bung back in, and my top tip for this is put this in with a bit of silicone, so a bit of bathroom sealer or tiger seal or something like that. I won't do it today because it will be messy and take ages, but when we do them we put a little bit of sealer around both sides of that, so we'd seal it on this side and on the pump side. Then you've got the new pump which will just push back in. So again, this is going to be a tight fit. I give it a twist and a squeeze to get it in. And then it is good as well just to put, because the new one doesn't have the same fixings, just put a little cable tie through that hole so it's all held on there nicely. Also, when we do these caps are rubbish, so I'd put another cap on at the same time. Just put one of these on so that it looks nice and also it doesn't leak. Just put that on there. Nice tight fit so they stay on, and then that's it. Just bolt it back on the car in the same way, so it literally, pipe just pushes back on and the plug pushes back on the bottom. Obviously now it's empty. If this was a new one then I'd be sorry, if this wasn't empty it'd be pouring out, so you need to fill it up. Pipe goes back on the bottom. Hold it back in place. Oh, don't drop the screws. It's always a good idea. A good little tip when you're putting these screws in, actually, and any screws that are like this that are self-tapping into the body, if you can't get them to start straight away, actually unscrew to start with, because then it will help the thread to just get started. Sometimes with old screws like this going straight into panel work, you're trying to turn them to get them started and they'll lock up and things like that. So there you go, washer system. The other thing that I would say is a lot of the time on these cars the washer jets themselves are rubbish, so literally for that just use a pin and just poke a pin through the inside. I'll just grab a screwdriver. Poke a pin through the inside hole on those, and you can actually use that to reposition them as well. So if you want to change the way they're spraying, because a lot of the time you spray them and they're just little limp, little and not any good. If you want to give them a really, really good clean over, I'll see if this comes apart. If I take one out, then I can just show you. Hopefully this will come out. Well, I haven't tried it in advance, so it might not. Okay, so if I hold it against there you can see it. So you can see on the back of this it's just got two little barbs on the back, and if you are to push the little barbs in then it pops out. Now that gives you a chance to give it a proper clean out, and ideally use an airline. So if you have got access to an airline you can put the compressed air on the back and just clean these through. But if not, you can still connect it onto the pipe when it's off the car obviously spray it away from you and give it a clean out and sort of play about with it. But it's just, if it won't clean out, it's a bit easier to take it off the car and do it like that. So that's the washer system. That's about all that goes wrong with the washer system, really. It's actually pretty good other than that. Those pumps are terrible though. We end up changing them on almost all the cars. Most of them leak. Yeah, top tip with that, use a bit of sealer when you put it in. I didn't then, but it will be helpful. Got any questions on that there?
Not on that, but back to the roof.
Yes.
The drain holes.
Yes.
How do they work? Where do they drain into?
Okay, so the dreaded drain holes. There's another video on this on YouTube and stuff, so do have a look at that as well. But this, like I said, the drain system on the Figaros is not their finest piece of design ever. This drain hole goes down a pipe through the roof, down behind the chrome inside the body, down through the post, out through the back of the post, and then comes out actually through the sill. It doesn't even hang out through the bottom. So the things to be careful of are, one, it does need to work. Test it with the water, with a watering can. We'll test this one now and see what it's like, because I would say, in my experience, I think that probably 50% of these work properly. The other 50% mean that, yeah, bad things are happening. I'll explain that in a minute. So if we fill that up with water, hopefully I'm not going to spend the rest of the afternoon after this live trying to work out where the water's gone, because it seems to be taking a lot. Oh, there we go, look at that, it's all working. So that's the water, but it's coming out just through a hole in the sill, and the pipe takes it all the way down and through there. The problems that you get are, you've had some welding done, or the car has had in its life welding done on the sill, and that means that the sill doesn't have the holes in, so the water goes in and then it just fills up like a channel, and that's when they really start to rust. The other challenge you might have is that if on your car it's been played about with, this pipe can get dislodged, and if it does, that means it can leak out anywhere between there and the bottom, because the pipe is just like a piece of clear hose pipe that runs off the back of that. Make sure they're clean, and try, you know, you can use like any implement you can get down there, a pipe cleaner implement, but don't get hold of this rubber and just pull it out the way, because what will happen is you'll pull the rubber off the end of the pipe, and then you will have no choice but to pull the whole system apart, and these are a nightmare to get to. So hopefully that answers your question. Typically, it's these ones that get blocked up. Any others around that? I can see the cameraman's looking really like, oh, trying to read questions and film at the same time. I could have another go at getting the laptop to work. All good, guys?
We're good.
Give me a wave or a thumbs up, and then I know that I'm helping.
72.
Cool, guys, I love it. Thank you for coming. I do hope that this is helpful to you. You asked me about battery isolators, dead batteries. Most annoying thing ever. You know, we went to move this car today and it had a bloody dead battery, and it's irritating, and it is bad, and a typical classic car thing. If they're really easy to fit, a lot of the time you call us and ask, always call, we're more than happy to help. But let me just show you how easy these are to fit. So literally the terminal comes undone, comes off, the new isolator terminal goes on, you do this up so it's tight, and then the battery terminal bolts onto the end of there so it screws back on, and that's it. They're really easy to fit. All that's happening is when you've got that screwed all the way down, the car can start, and when you screw it back off, the car won't start. So it's also a little bit of a security, but mainly it just stops the battery draining. The battery drains in most of these just through age, and sometimes it's just because the battery's old and not very efficient, but also where the electrical system's old, and especially as most of them have had some alarm system or other fitted at some point in their life, it's yeah, it's pretty, you know, it's a great little thing to add, and it's really easy to do. Okay, what else have we got on here? So the radio, I'm just going to show you the radio briefly on the bench, because there's always lots of questions around radios and how they work, and they're a bit of yeah, there's a few little things that I might be able to help you with, just so you can see the comparisons as well, really. So this is an original Figaro radio. It's how it came in the car. Probably had some repair or another over the years, but it's generally as it came from Nissan. So you've got an analog radio along the front, and you've got a tape deck in there and a CD deck. Now, about 1 in 100 of these work properly, and when they do work properly, the sound is absolutely shocking. So you've got two choices. You can either put in the upgraded version, or you can put in a double DIN unit. Personally, I like the double DIN unit. I like the features. I like Apple products. I like being able to use their CarPlay stuff, and I think it looks pretty cool. But if you want to keep it a bit more sympathetic, you can use one of these. So this one's been upgraded. The difference is you do not have the tape deck. The tape deck's shut off because that's how they're made. Tapes are obsolete. You still have the CD deck, and you might have, depending on the model, Bluetooth like this one's got. So this one's a Bluetooth system, so it means that you'll have this little microphone which is wired in when it's fitted. These are reasonably easy to fit. They're all plug in. You just have to push the cable behind the rubber. And it means that you can talk on your phone and connect it. The only slight downside that I would say is that you still have the same amount of buttons on the radio. So you've got modern features inside. Your little analog display's been replaced with a digital display, but you've only got the same amount of buttons. So you might end up with multiple commands from buttons. So the menus can be a little bit more complicated, but that's about it. It's a nice upgrade. It makes it work, basically. You know, if you can't cruise along with the roof down listening to the music you like, then it's makes the cars slightly less enjoyable. Any questions around those, guys? Okay, so what have I got next? So I know that one of you, sorry I've forgotten your name, contacted us to ask about how to find air leaks. Hopefully you can hear me still. Give us a wave or something and tell us you can hear, because the rain's getting heavy and there's noisy cars as well. I can shout if you can't hear. How to check for air leaks. So basically the way that you know that you're starting to get air leaks is that your car will idle up and down. It won't run as cleanly. When you put your foot down, it will sort of go burr, 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 and be slow picking up. Now when it's doing that, because it's a turbocharged engine, it needs air to run, and it is normally because one of the hoses, these hoses here, so you've got air hoses running across the top of here down into the turbocharger, and you've got the other air hoses that run around the inlet manifold. Now, exactly like the rubbers, those start to perish, they start to crack, and they basically start to fail. And so when you need to test them, short of taking absolutely everything off the car, you need a quick fix to be able to test them. So the best way to do it is, give me a second, let me just start this car because it's got a flat battery, so it didn't have an isolator switch. I was hoping that I would use the car outside as well, but if you look out there you can see that the rain did got has got really miserable and wet. Hopefully it's going to clear up a bit over the weekend. But let me just start. I think I can start this car. Do I leave the key in it? Was it? Right. So this one is actually pretty good. But what happens is when you get that horrible idling up and down thing, it's because you've got air, too much air. All of the controls on this engine relate to air. All of the little solenoids that make the car run right, all of these little control valves, they're all letting more or less air into the engine. And what happens is if you get a tiny little leak somewhere, a vacuum leak, then all of a sudden it just won't run right at all. So when you need to test it, there's two ways you can do it. When we do it at the shop, we've got a smoke tester, we put smoke into it and we see if the smoke comes out through any holes. But there is a quick way you can test it at home, and that is by just either using a simple fluid like a brake cleaner or WD-40 and spraying it around the joins where the pipes meet. Now if there was a leak in one of these, the second I sprayed that on, the revs would go right up high. Then you'd wait a second, the fluid would dry out, because I've used brake cleaner there, so it's dried out straight away, and the idle would go back down. That hissing is just because I sprayed brake cleaner on it. But that would then tell you where the leaks are. I've known garages that spend months, owners that have been to garages spent months trying to trace little leaks and problems in their cars and can't ever get to the bottom of it. And that is a really good way to do it. Any of those pipes, we actually supply those Any of those pipes, we actually supply as upgraded ones as well, so that when you change them, they last a decent amount of time, because otherwise you've got to put a bit of tape around them or try and repair them like that. So the next thing I wanted to tell you, and I left this running because I just wanted to give you a rundown on the lights on the dash, because it's one of those things that people are never quite sure exactly what does what, and also when to stop, because if the wrong light comes on and you don't stop, you could be into thousands and thousands of pounds. So come around here and have a little look. So this car's got no lights on at the moment. If we start from the right hand side, you've got the battery light. Now the battery light's going to come on if the alternator fails. If that comes on, you don't need to stop the car, but typically you're probably only going to get another half an hour before the car cuts out because the battery's going to run out. Rear window, we already talked about the demister. If the light's not coming on, there's something wrong with the system. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to work, but if the light's on, then that's what's happening there. Now the next one is the catalytic converter light. So this light was designed originally so that it would come on if the catalytic converter started to fail. Two things. One is that all of the catalytic converters that I've come across don't fully work. They're all 30 years old, and they typically come on because the car's got a misfire. So it's got some fuel that's gone into the exhaust and it's got hot and it's set that light off. You can't turn it off again. You don't need to stop the car if it comes on. We would generally disconnect it at the bulb or at the plug at the front. I don't think you can even buy the sensor, and if you can, it's hundreds of pounds. So that one's not really one to worry about, but if it does come on, you've probably got a little fault going on. Next one is the oil light. If that ever comes on, please stop straight away and call us or call somebody that knows, because at that point your oil pressure is so low it's causing the light to come on, and it means that your engine has either already failed or is about to fail. If there is one thing that should mean that you just literally pull over in a second, it is that light, the oil can light. Then you've got the seatbelt light next to that, self-explanatory, you haven't plugged the seatbelt in. And then finally you've got the brake light. So if the brake light comes on while you're driving, it's generally because the fluid has got a little bit low. That one you can fix yourself. Well, I say fix yourself, I shouldn't say that. You can get the light to go off, but it generally means you've got a leak from a brake cylinder or the master cylinder. But it basically means that this pot, which is brake fluid, DOT4 brake fluid, I think it says something different on the top, but we use DOT4. Yeah, it says DOT3 on there, but we fill the systems with DOT4, which is fine. It means that that system has got too low, and this little sensor is telling the dash it's too low. Typically, as long as it's not gushing straight back out, you can top it up, but you do need to get it looked at pretty soon and see what that is. Just while we were talking about the catalytic converter, one thing that I've been asked about lots of times recently is the DCAT system, and this is one of our systems. It's a full stainless exhaust system, and this part is a DCAT, and that means the big catalytic converter that originally was there, that was meant to reduce the emissions, and is now blocked up and 30 years old and not working and not needed for an MOT in this country, is basically clogging the car up and stopping it working. So if you change to this system, especially the DCAT, you'll get an improved power, you'll get improved efficiency, improved drivability, you'll get a better sound. And the nice thing about these stainless exhausts is this part is just fit, all of it is just fit and forget, because the original stuff is made from mild steel and it will just rust and fail in not much time at all. A cheap exhaust will fail in 18 months, whereas this will last longer than the car, I expect. It's really nice stuff. I've got a video already on fitting the DCAT if you have a look through our YouTube, and I'll try and do one on the whole exhaust system, because I know some of you guys have asked about that. So yeah, even on a miserable day like today when it's getting